Peru's high-stakes election. Can the next president end a decade of chaos? Imagine living in a country that has gone through nearly 10 presidents in just 10 years. A country where political scandals, corruption investigations, impeachment battles, and public distrust have become the norm. Now imagine that country is heading into one of the most important elections in its modern history. That's exactly what's happening in Peru. As millions of Peruvians prepare to vote in a decisive presidential runoff election, the stakes could not be higher. The outcome may determine whether Peru can finally break free from years of political instability or continue down a path of uncertainty and division. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Peru's dramatic election battle, the candidates fighting for power, and why the entire region is paying close attention. Let's begin. Peru, one of South America's largest economies, has spent much of the last decade trapped in a political crisis. Presidents have been removed, resigned, impeached, or forced from office in rapid succession. Political institutions have lost credibility, public trust has collapsed, and frustration among ordinary citizens has reached alarming levels. Crime has become a major concern. Corruption scandals have repeatedly shaken the country's leadership, and many Peruvians feel that the political class has failed them. Against this backdrop, Peru held its first round of presidential elections in April 2026. The result revealed just how fragmented the country has become. A record number of candidates competed for the presidency, but no one came close to winning outright. The electorate was deeply divided, forcing the race into a runoff scheduled for June 7. Now, two very different political figures remain. On one side is Keiko Fujimori, one of the most recognizable and controversial names in Peruvian politics. On the other is Roberto Sanchez, a left-wing politician who emerged as a surprise challenger. The battle between these two candidates has become a referendum on Peru's future. Let's start with Keiko Fujimori. She is no stranger to presidential politics. In fact, this is her fourth attempt to win the presidency. Keiko is the daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori, a leader who remains one of the most polarizing figures in Peru's history. Supporters credit him with restoring order and defeating insurgent groups during the 1990s. Critics accuse his government of authoritarian practices and human rights abuses. For many voters, Keiko represents experience and stability. She has campaigned heavily on restoring security, combating crime, and bringing stronger leadership to government institutions. Rising crime rates have become a central issue in this election, and her message resonates with voters seeking order and predictability. But she also faces significant challenges. A large portion of the electorate strongly opposes her political brand. Her previous presidential defeats demonstrate how difficult it can be for her to unite a country that remains deeply divided over her family's legacy. Then there is Roberto Sanchez. While less internationally known than Fujimori, Sanchez has built momentum by appealing to voters frustrated with Peru's traditional political establishment. He is associated with left-wing policies, has attracted support from rural communities and citizens seeking major political and economic reforms. Sanchez has presented himself as an alternative to the political elites that many Peruvians blame for years of dysfunction. His campaign has focused on social inequality, institutional reform, greater state involvement in addressing economic challenges. Yet he, too, faces criticism. Opponents question whether his policies could create economic uncertainty and whether he can effectively govern a politically fractured nation. This is what makes the election so fascinating. Neither candidate enters the runoff with overwhelming public support. In fact, together, they received less than 1/3 of the vote during the first round, highlighting the extraordinary level of voter dissatisfaction. Millions of Peruvians either supported other candidates, spoiled their ballots, or chose not to participate. That means the runoff will largely be decided by voters who are still uncertain about both options. Recent opinion polls suggest the race is extremely close. Some surveys show Keiko Fujimori holding a narrow lead, while a large percentage of voters remain undecided or are considering blank ballots. Analysts believe these undecided voters could ultimately determine the winner. Adding to the tension are concerns about the electoral process itself. The first round of voting experienced logistical problems, including delays at polling stations and extended voting periods. Authorities have promised reforms and additional oversight to ensure a smoother runoff election. Meanwhile, allegations of electoral fraud from some political factions have further complicated the political atmosphere, even though election officials insist the process remains legitimate. Beyond domestic politics, this election has important important international implications. Peru is one of the world's leading producers of copper and other critical minerals. These resources are essential for global industries, including electric vehicles, renewable energy technologies, and electronics manufacturing. Investors, multinational companies, and foreign governments are all watching closely. The next president will influence Peru's economic policies, foreign investment climate, and strategic relationships with major powers such as the United States and China. Political stability in Peru matters far beyond its borders.
The election is also taking place during a period of broader political shifts across Latin America. Countries throughout the region have experienced increasing polarization, economic challenges, and public dissatisfaction with traditional political power centers. Peru's runoff has become another example of a wider struggle over the future direction of democratic governance in the region. Can political institutions regain public trust? Can elected leaders deliver meaningful reforms? Can democracies overcome growing frustration among voters? These questions are not unique to Peru, but Peru's election may provide some important answers. As election day approaches, one thing is clear. Peru stands at a crossroads. A victory for Keiko Fujimori could signal a move towards stronger conservative leadership focused on security and institutional stability. A victory for Roberto Sanchez could represent a demand for structural change and a rejection of traditional political power centers. Either way, the next president will inherit enormous challenges: rising crime, political fragmentation, economic uncertainty, and a population that has grown increasingly skeptical of its leaders. The world will soon find out whether Peru can finally turn the page on a decade of instability, or whether the country's political turmoil is far from over. What do you think? Will Keiko Fujimori finally win the presidency after multiple attempts, or will Roberto Sanchez pull off an upset and reshape Peru's political future? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more global political and geopolitical news. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.